All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Small Outing to Big Adventure, how to embrace and include the kids. I'm thrilled to be on with a friend today, Isabelle Bausch, who I think I might have just messed up your last name.
Didn't actually. That was
I didn't.
beautiful.
Wow, impressive. And Isabelle is an amazing coach for moms. She just really helps moms break through mindset blocks, handle motherhood with just the utmost grace as she does herself. And she is an amazing person to have on today. So Isabelle, I'm going to turn it over to you to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and your family, and then we'll keep going.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you, Jody, for having me here. So I am a mother's empowerment coach, and I help moms really prioritize themselves so that they can serve themselves and their loved ones from full cups. Rather than from the dregs, like when you pour yourself a cup of tea and there's those dregs at the bottom. Nobody wants to drink those. And so when we fill ourselves up with our own love, then we can serve our loved ones, those yummy cups. And I'm a mom of two. So my daughter is 8. Her name is Grace. And my son, Benjamin, is about to be 4 years old. And we love this time of year because of the adventuring that we all get to do, and just for the spaciousness that summertime allows that we don't always get in the school year.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. And so tell me, what does adventure mean to you and to your family?
So for me, I love to create adventure in the small, kind of the typically mundane tasks that we experience as moms. So I'm married to a Sagittarius who loves traveling and big adventures. My nervous system actually doesn't enjoy those big Europe trips. Or, let's take the kids camping for 2 weeks. I like to be home. I like to be amongst my things. And so for me, adventure in the backyard is something that I like to be able to include in those, in those summer adventures. And I do that by making the small things extra special. We talk about it, we explore the bugs under the rocks and make journals about them and color them. So that's a big part of adventure for me, is just being curious, which my kids already are.
Being curious, that's awesome. Tell us a little more about how you turn the mundane into adventures. Because I think for a lot of us, there's a need for that. There's a need for us to sometimes just spice up the regular things that happen in our lives, and we can't always be traveling to this place or camping at that place or hiking here or sailing there. So give us some, tips, tricks. What are the best ways that you've turned the mundane into really special adventures with your kids?
Well, one of the first things I do is I choose. So rather than say, we can't take this big trip, I say we're choosing to stay home because that's what we want. And we talk a lot about our values as a family and what actions are in alignment with those values. Because so often I know that in my own life and in the lives of my clients, we say that we value something and then our actions are the opposite of those values. So your question was, what do I do to make that mundane kind of special? And the secret sauce is mindfulness. It's just being hyper aware and conscious of these little tiny moments, which I don't expect of myself 24/7, right? I am not, sitting on a mountaintop with that being the only thing that is being asked of me is to be mindful. I am not always mindful washing the dishes. I'm not always mindful playing with my kids. But when I am, there's a quality, there's like a sparkle that comes into those moments that is really, it feeds me, and I know it feeds them. So, for instance, we were just outside today playing in the backyard. The kids wanted to run through the sprinklers, and me just bringing my mindfulness to that 15-minute moment, I realized like how fast their childhood is going, and how beautiful they are, and how the sun and the temperature was just incredible. And I didn't want to be anywhere else in that moment. I was just in full appreciation and joy. And that was my adventure for the day. And we didn't have to leave the house.
Wow. Really relishing that moment. I felt like I was there with you, seeing your kids running through the sprinkler with the sun beating on my
You're wearing sunscreen, so.
Yeah, totally. Always be safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I love that. Just being really mindful when you can. And as you said, I found for myself also, I'm not mindful all the time when I'm with my kids, but when you can be, it can really help transform the moment.
And I just want to, make that point even more clear, because our expectations of ourselves and of our kids are really impactful. So when we expect ourselves to be perfect, or when we use words like always or never, it can get really dangerous, and it's setting ourselves up for failure, because we're human. And when we're not able to live up to those expectations, we get down on ourselves. But when we set ourselves up for success, like I can be present for 15 minutes, then I get to celebrate that success.
And success breeds success.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Wow. And how do you mentioned a little bit earlier that you have conversations as a family about your values and what's important to you. How do you do that with a 4-year-old?
Well, we talk about it around the kitchen table. So every night we light a little candle. My daughter lights the candle, and we say our roses and our thorns.
Okay.
And so, that's definitely something that my son can grasp, especially since his older sister goes first.
Sure.
And it gives everyone seated, whether they're a guest or, family member, comments on their rose, their favorite part of their day, and their thorn, their least favorite part of the day. And then woven into that conversation, we talk about values. So, if Benjamin got pushed on the playground today, that was his thorn. And we talk about how it doesn't feel good to be pushed. And we don't want to push other people, because we know that when other people push us, it hurts, and those kind of things.
Wow, that's so interesting. And then you can just tie that into really being present with the choices that you make for your family, right? So if you're choosing to stay home, it's a conscious choice versus, oh, we're not going on that trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you see your kids react in different ways when they are, say, away from home versus when they're having little adventures in the backyard? What's their relationship to those adventures?
Yeah. Let me sit with that. That's a really good question. You're asking what's the difference between how they react when we're away from home and when we're at home?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my daughter especially is also really a homebody. So often, my plan for the day is to go out, and she just doesn't want to. She just wants to stay home and be quiet. And I sometimes make the choice to go out instead of stay home, even though that's not what she wants. And what I notice is that if I give her enough time ahead to really, you know, for us to talk about what the plan for the day is, she's much more likely to get on board and to be pleasant during the outing. But if I just spring it on her, it's more difficult. So again, there's like that setting up of expectation. So if, you know, we talk about the night before what the adventure is for the next day, then when that time comes, she's like, okay, let's do it. So that's you know, I noticed that if she doesn't have that expectation that we're going to do something fun, she really digs her heels in. And so I think that's the biggest. And the same goes for if it's a home day and she wants to go out and have a play date. If I've laid out the expectation that tomorrow is a home day and we're going to have a lot of fun, we're going to do this and this and this, and we're not going to go out, we're not going to have a play date, then that's, you know, in her mind already.
It just shows how important that preparation is, that mental preparation is, I would say, even sometimes more important than the physical aspect of, do I have everything that I need? Do I have their swimsuit and a change of clothes and the sunscreen, you know, and all of that? Because the way we set up the experience for ourselves and for our kids can really make or break the experience.
And what I love about what you're saying too is that the planning is part of it, you know. I like to think of a trip as, you know, a full cycle of the seasons, where the actual outing, you know, is the peak, the summer part of the trip, and the planning is the spring, right? So the spring is just as important as the summer, and it's part of the trip too, right? And then the fall is us preparing to come home, right?
Yeah.
Which is also just as important. And then the winter is that rest period right after we've arrived home, which so many of us don't give ourselves that period of just resting. We jump right back into whatever. You know?
That's true, but having the time to process and bring it home,
great.
Sit with it. Yeah. Oh, I love that analogy of the seasons. And there's an anticipation that is also really healthy and also like so important. And I think research has shown that anticipation that kids develop when they're looking forward to something, it like helps them do better in school and in life. And it's just so valuable. So I love that idea of looking at it as the 4 seasons of taking a trip, you know?
And we all prefer certain seasons, and that's okay too, but they're all valid and they're all just part of it. So there's never a year that doesn't have a certain season, even if it's a short season, right? We still go through that weather change.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. Cool. Yeah. I'm going to ask you one last question before I turn it over to you to tell our community about your wonderful free gift.
Yes.
And that is, just because I know you're a great person to ask this question to, how do you recommend we go about handling tantrums and or like the limiting belief that comes along with that? So for example, someone like a mother might say, you know, I don't want to take that flight because I'm scared my child's going to have a tantrum on the airplane, right? How do we deal with that that's holding us back so much? How do we break through?
I love this question. It's such an important question. I have, you know, we all ask that question, right?
Yes.
So, and I am not a parenting coach. So I am a mom coach. But I have very strong beliefs around this.
Sure.
And my first go-to is reminding ourselves that all feelings are valid. Doesn't mean all behavior is valid. but that includes our own feelings. So I would ask this mom to get clear on why she is resisting her child's tantrum. What feeling is the child's tantrum bringing up in her that she is resisting? And it's usually, it can often be shame or embarrassment about what other people are going to think. And again, not to make her feel worse, but just to acknowledge that her feelings are important too. And how can she get ownership of her feelings and also manage her feelings so that her child's tantrum doesn't, she doesn't blame her feelings of anger, which might lead to yelling or, pulling, to really manage her own feelings. And what does that take? Often it takes some deep breaths, some self-reminders that this child's feelings are all valid. And I would just, continue to acknowledge the feeling that your child is going through, again, that season, right? All things will change. And so even though this child is screaming at the moment, it won't scream, he or she won't scream forever. And just to remember that connection before correction, right? So really to be able to connect with oneself before you try to parent is, number one. And then just to connect with the child, to tell the child, I see you, I hear you, this is really hard. We're in a new place with all these different people. I want you to look around. Look at all these people. Do you see how they're looking at you? Let them let them feel what they're feeling. They can't bite you or hit you or harm themselves or anything. But I encourage my child to really move through the feeling rather than just always be happy. I don't want to give my child the message that I'm only wanting to connect with you if you're happy and sparkly. Like I love you unconditionally, even when you're tantruming inside the airplane. And you can't throw juice all over, So it's both. But again, number one is managing our own feelings around the tantrum, and then allowing ourselves to have a tantrum out, in a safe space, because tantrums in our kids often evoke tantrums in ourselves. And I believe everyone deserves a good tantrum in a safe space. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that is game changing. That's awesome. Allow ourselves to have a tantrum too.
Maybe not in a public place.
Not on an airplane.
Right? But maybe with our partners or with a friend or with a coach, someone who we can really feel safe with, where we can move through the emotion. Because I don't know a lot of people who gift themselves the full range of emotion. But when our kids move through an emotion and their face is clear, they don't have to do it. They don't have to let it fester. And the same is true for us. So if we're angry all the time, we probably need to have a tantrum.
Say it like it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's great. And I hope that this just brings a little bit of light to some of us out there. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and tantrums aren't forever. And we can practice at home. Like everything that you said is such good advice, even at home in our safe spaces. We still have to connect with ourselves. We still, need to help our child feel empowered to feel their emotions and work through them. So, it's just the same, right? Yeah. It's just the same.
The adventure of life.
The adventure of life. Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. And have compassion, guys.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Isabelle, thank you so much for joining me. And before you hop off, can you share about your free gift?
Yes. So I'm sharing with you the Balanced Mama Planner. And this is a planner that will help you get that balance between, this outward moving, this giving, this being of service to your kids, to your community, to your career. And then this feeling of receiving, this feeling of self-care, which can happen in the form of a tantrum, but this moving of inward. So it's kind of like this, it teaches you how to let your day breathe with moments of external giving and showing up, and then moments of breathing in and being quiet and still. So I hope that's helpful for your community, Jody.
Oh, I know it will be. And thank you so much for that generous gift and for joining us today. I really appreciate it, Isabelle.
You're welcome. Take care.